SMART goals for personal development. You might even know what SMART goals are, and they are a great thing to keep in mind when you set goals. But how do you adapt them for more amorphous things like improving my relationships, being better about my boundaries, lowering my anxiety? Well, I'm going to walk you through 4 keys to setting SMART goals for personal development. And actually, one reason I decided to do this video today is that I've been working on a series of videos about reparenting yourself. And the next video I'm going to come out with in the series is practical steps for reparenting. Now, reparenting is a big amorphous topic, but there are some very specific things we can do. So I want to refer to SMART goals, and I realized, haven't really put out a video on SMART goals, so I decided to do this first. And if you're interested in the overall topic of reparenting or in general living a more joyful life, make sure you subscribe to my channel. So let's get into the topic. The concept of SMART goals was first put forth by a management consultant named George Duran in 1981. And this concept has proven very useful, solid. It's really pervasively used throughout the business world, and it's also used in the personal development world. So SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. There's a time frame for these goals. So let me give you an example. Let's say you want to run a marathon and you tell your friends, on my bucket list, I'm going to run a marathon one day. Well, that's not really a goal. It certainly isn't a SMART goal because it's not specific. It's more of an aspiration. It's more of a wish, which is wonderful. Aspirations are great. But how do you turn that into a goal? So to make it a goal, let's make it specific. Okay, specifically, I'm going to run the Boston Marathon this fall. I'm not going to do that. No, not me. But let's say that's what you decided. So that would be making your goal more specific. Who, me, what, and when. Run a marathon this fall. So is it measurable? Sure, it's measurable whether you do it or not, right? Is it attainable? Well, I happen to know because I have 2 family members who will be running the Boston Marathon this fall, that if you have not been accepted into the Boston Marathon, it is now July of 2021, you will not be running it this fall because the acceptances have already gone out. Plus, for the Boston Marathon, I believe you need a qualifying time. So as you go through this goal, you might hit this step of attainable and realize, oh, I can't do it. I might as well bag it. But if you really keep the focus on a SMART goal, you could say, okay, I can't do it this fall, and maybe I can't do it in Boston because I may not have a qualifying time, but I can research where there is a marathon that I can run as a first timer. And that could be one of your next steps, and steps can also be SMART. So hopefully you can see how this can be an iterative process. And then the other piece of attainable is it attainable for me? Can I practice and train enough? And probably having more than a few months would be a good idea for that as well. So I'm going to skip from there to time bound. So let's say we now say I am going to run a marathon sometime in the next 18 months. I've shifted my time frame to make it more attainable, but it is still a specific time frame. So let me back up to the R. Is this relevant? Is this goal relevant to me, my life, my self-esteem, my image of myself? Will it be fun for me? Will I have enough motivation to push through the pain of achieving this goal? It needs to be relevant to myself and my sense of self. So having revised this goal a little bit, we can then get very specific, and maybe we could say, this week I'm going to research where I can run a marathon within the next 18 months, and I will complete that task in 1 week. And then to make it even more specific, I'm going to put it on my calendar for Tuesday morning between 9 a.m. and 10 a.m. And then I can develop some very specific goals around training. So that's turning an aspiration into a SMART goal. So a specific goal like running a marathon fits very well into the SMART goal framework. But how do we apply it to those other more amorphous concepts that I mentioned? So I'm going to talk you through how you can take a more amorphous personal development goal and make it more specific. But before I do that, I want to run through those 4 keys to setting goals in a way that you can achieve them. So you set yourself up for success. So the number one key here is to focus on what you can control. This is the biggest mistake that people make in goal setting, particularly in the personal development area. So focusing on what you can control. Let's say you're a writer and you want to get published. That's your sort of big picture goal. But to turn it into a SMART goal, you need to focus on what you can control. So what can you control? You can control whether you send your short stories to publishers. You can control whether you actually put things out there in the world. You may not be able to control whether it actually gets published. As a writer, you can also control the amount of time you spend writing within limits, right? There's always things happen. But let's say part of your goal is to say, I will write 2 days a week for 3 hours. I'll just put my butt in the chair and I will write for those 3 hours. Well, that is something that you have control over. I'd also like to add that focusing on what we can't control is very demotivating. It is one of the quickest ways to get off track. The second key is to make sure that these goals are in line with your true values. If you set yourself a goal for running a marathon, but you don't really care about it at the end of the day, it doesn't really go to your core sense of self, or it's not super important to you, well, then getting through the pain and suffering and time it will take to push yourself to that extent at the end of the day won't be worth it. So key number 2 is to focus on goals that are in alignment with your values. And I work on this with people in my group coaching program. We spend a good amount of time really going into what are our values? What's our vision for our life? What's our mission? And then we set goals from there. And I'll talk about the program a little bit more at the end of today's video. So key number 3 is to use relatively short time frames with a period to reassess. So here I'm going to jump into one of the more amorphous areas and lead you into how these keys can help you make SMART goals. So let's say you are working on your boundaries and you've realized that you are an inveterate advice giver. You give advice to people all the time and you realize that that's a bit of a boundary crossing. So you make a resolution to stop giving advice to your loved ones to see whether it improves the relationship or not. Again, this is a common thing that I work with people on. So you could just say, okay, I'm going to stop giving advice. Well, done. Measurable? That's way too amorphous. That would be very hard to follow. And instead, it could be, I'm going to use a tool of stop, take 5, and think before I react with advice. That could be a specific goal. My time frame could be, I'm going to try this for 2 weeks. My method of measuring could be to journal at the end of the day. Was I able to do it or not, and why? Reassess and journal with curiosity. And then at the end of 2 weeks, see what happens. So this more amorphous desire to improve relationship by holding back on giving advice you've given many times before or giving unsolicited advice can be made very specific by committing to make a note to yourself every evening. Was I able to do it or not? And why? What happened? Explore it. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, really look at it in a non-judgmental, curious way, because that's how we improve. And then key number 4, expect setbacks and have a plan. So going back to our marathon example, if you've never run a marathon before and maybe you're a casual jogger and you decide to take something on like that, there's a high likelihood that you might have a setback. You might have an injury. Some personal issue may come up and interrupt your training program. There may be something that sets you back for a temporary period of time. So if you expect setbacks and then you have a plan for getting yourself back on track, you are much more likely to be successful. One of the big problems we have in achieving goals is that we're absolute in our thinking. We think I either do it or I'm a failure. And then if I fail or I have a little bit of a slip or a little bit of a setback, boom, see, told you I'm a failure. might as well not even try. Let's tackle another amorphous goal of I'd like to improve my marriage or my relationship with my primary partner. Very common goal. Many people would like to do that. What do we have control over and what don't we have control over, right? How do we focus on what we can control and let go of their response or whether they're changing or not? So to focus on what you can change. Now, one way to make this specific would be to think about what's a common complaint of your partner. If your partner is complaining that you don't help around the house more, a specific thing you could do would be to sit down with your partner and ask them what is it they would like to do and see if you can negotiate something that's reasonable and then make an effort to do it, right? So a specific goal would be to sit down, have that conversation, and then out of that conversation, you could come up with a plan for 2 weeks where you actually write into your calendar, I will do the dishes at this hour. I will do the laundry on this day. So you can actually put it in as a plan. At the end of 2 weeks, you can reassess. How'd you do? How does your partner feel? That would be a wonderful thing to do if that's something your partner complains about. And actually, there is a great book. There's a great resource on this. So you could also just set a goal of, I'm going to read this book, because the book, The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, I'll show you here. I do have it right here. It's a wonderful book about how we all speak in different love languages. What means love to me might be different than what means love to you. And learning to speak in our partner's love language, super helpful for relationships. So again, these are just some ideas about how to take an amorphous concept and make it very specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-bound, and focused on what you can control, tied to your values, short time frames with reassessment, and having a plan for setbacks. So these are my 4 keys for setting SMART goals for personal development reasons to help you achieve success. And these are also the ways to begin to build new habits. So one thing I love about coaching is that it is very focused on goals and making progress. And when we can set SMART goals and we can attain them, it's very motivating. That's why the short time frames, the attainability, we keep moving forward. And I mentioned that I do have a coaching program, and it's called Roadmap to Joy and Authentic Confidence. And it's really about rewiring what's happening in here so you can live a life of more joy and self-confidence. It's about transforming those negative core beliefs and moving from limiting beliefs to productive beliefs, moving away from negative self-talk towards self-compassion, moving from worry and stress to mindfulness. And I base this program on my 20 years of helping people live more joyful lives, on what works, what really helps people shift. So just so you know, this is a coaching program. This is not therapy. It's coaching, so it focuses on goals and actionable steps. And there is group coaching twice a month. The program provides support and accountability. The course is laid out in a private course site with pre-recorded videos, and I also do some live videos specifically for the people in the program. So if you have a serious interest in this program, please review the landing page and I will link that below. And if you'd like to have a conversation with me about whether the program is a fit or not, you can book a fit conversation. And there's a link to book that conversation on the landing page for the program. But in general, I just encourage you to use this technique of SMART goals in your personal life to move yourself towards more joy, self-compassion, peacefulness, and self-confidence. So if you've liked this video, please do give it a like, subscribe to my channel if you are not already subscribed, and I look forward to seeing you the next time.